I have a confession to make, and I also want to say
Oi!
thank you very much.
Oi!
I'm
Confession.
sorry.
Oh.
I know people must come to you all the time and tell you their, darkest fantasies and confessions. But
Yeah.
but this one, I don't know how dark it is, but I think we can show the first slide.
Darker the better. Let's see.
Please. This is the first strip of yours I remember having seen. I was only 13 or 14
Oh my God.
when I saw this. And I was raised on a strict diet of Tintin, of Spirou, of Donald Duck. And then one day at my public library in Silkeborg, where I'm from, I found this one.
Wait a minute. You found it at the public library? What?
Yeah.
What was it doing there?
That's the way we do it in Denmark. We put it in
the
public libraries.
library. And what year was that?
This has been in the middle of the 80s, 85 or something, 86 perhaps.
Huh.
And it was kind of throwing a bomb into my very protected existence, I think.
I'm sorry.
No, it's actually, I think it was one of the good bombs, I would say, because all of a sudden I was reminded that there's something else going on out there. And I won't say that this strip excited me.
Right.
Pause. But at least I can't say that I understood it fully when I saw it the first time, but there was something in it that told me that perhaps not everything is as it should be. Perhaps there is a bigger world out there where things like that happen. Perhaps I'm not as strange as I think when I have my, at that time, very puberty kind of fantasies and things like that.
And now you're addicted to pornography or what?
Well, I'm afraid if I don't know if I don't think my mother's here, so just yes. I think you ruined me forever. But I was just
maybe it was all a big terrible mistake. I don't know. I have no idea.
But I was just wondering. I know that you started out doing these comic books, and you've been doing these comic books and these strips for so many years because you couldn't help it. You had to do it.
I couldn't help it.
And it was a kind of self-therapy as well?
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. I'm sure, I was a bad boy when I was young, but I probably would have been much worse if I hadn't been able to draw all those comics and foist them on the public. And I probably would have been a much worse behavior than I actually was.
I think perhaps a lot of us would.
Yeah,
I think it actually helped.
Maybe so. Who knows? I mean, there's the argument, the anti-pornography argument that men look at pornography and they want to rape women or, they want to do terrible things to women. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's one argument against, explicit sexual images. But, okay. What my defense is, when I'm criticized for drawing that stuff, that I'm an artist. An artist can't be held accountable for what he puts out on paper or makes an object. Okay, if somebody wants to publish it, that's another matter. That's another matter of judgment. If somebody wants to buy it, that's another matter. But if, as an artist, you can't be censored. It's not, you just have to get it out there, put it down, whatever it is, express it. It's harmless. It's not, you're not hurting anybody. If you don't want to look at it, if it offends you to look at it, okay, don't look at it. But publishing it, disseminating it to the public, that gets political, and I don't know. I got nothing to say about that. I don't know. That I don't know. I have no answer for that.
But when did you become aware of the things that you were drawing for your own sake? When did you become aware of you actually also were drawing for a lot of other people, for me instead, for people like me?
Well, when I was a teenager, I made sex drawings and flushed them down the toilet afterward, I was so embarrassed and I didn't show it to anybody for years. And then, when the hippie times and things opened up and I met artists like S. Clay Wilson, who was just drawing any crazy thing that came into his head. And I thought, okay, wow. So, and you take the risk, the chance of actually putting this out there in front of the public, It's a risk. You don't know how people are going to react to it. And some people are deeply offended and angry. Oh, you're misogynist, you're racist, you're anti-Semitic, you're blah, blah, blah. And other people think it's funny, or it actually opens up something in them to the broader reality. And so, you can't please everybody. I don't know. Some people are going to be angry and offended when they see that stuff.
We talked about it backstage before, that there is actually right now people, especially in America, in the comic book world.
It's not just in the comic book world. It's like young college students who somehow they've seen a couple of my drawings and then they put nasty stuff on the internet about me. I'm a sexual predator. Yeah. Me, a sexual predator, okay.
But the interesting thing is, I heard somebody say the other day that nobody cares about context. And I think isn't that one of the big problems today, that if you look at your drawings isolated and just see what's there, could that be a problem?
I don't know. I'm too old. I don't even understand where these kids are coming from. It's a different world. They grew up with the internet, and they have all these, blogs and podcasts and textings and Twitters. I don't even know what it all is, but they kind of reinforce each other, and I don't know. I don't understand the mentality, but it's as we discussed before, it's a little bit scary. You don't know where it's going. You don't know where it's all leading.
Yeah.
You have that on the one hand, all extreme political correctness on one hand, and on the other side you have all these assholes that want to promote racism or promote some right-wing agenda that's so.
But I guess one of the things you've been saying always is that we have to be able to talk about things. We have to be able to imagine these things. We have to be able to kind of picture these things because the opposite kind of...
Well, I have to. I don't know about everybody. I have to be able to talk about those things and bring them out and, how express myself, or I used to. I don't know anymore. This becomes so problematic now that I don't draw women anymore. I try not to look at women. I try not to think about women. It's just too much trouble. I'm emasculated. Okay, forget it. I won't think about it. I'll try not to. Oh, those fantasies. Oh, stop. Nope, don't think of it.
And as you said to The Guardian recently, you're no longer a slave of your raging libido.
Yeah, I'm 76 years old, so it's kind of, thank God, it's kind of, wound down. Somebody in the 19th century, some famous writer said, when you're a young man, to your sex drive is like being chained to a madman. That's right. I was like when I was young, just crazy, obsessed with sex and women and my fantasies. Just obsessed every day, It was this constant thing, and very masturbatory, and just couldn't. Now it's kind of relief to be free of that to a large extent. It is, I feel. I'm kind of liberated from it, slave to that stuff, and just being speechless in front of an attractive woman. I don't know what to say. It's so, the desire was so powerful. It's speechless.
But
I used to marvel at men who had this glib way of talking to women, charming women. How do they do it? How can they have the presence of mind in front of this beautiful woman to come out with this line of gab? How do they do it? I couldn't do it. Instead, I just did crazy things, jump on them or something.
But I guess your raging libido was also kind of the artistic drive in a sense.
Yeah, totally id-driven. The artwork, was.
And you've been so productive, so it's been a really big raging libido.
Yeah, that's right. A big part of it, actually.
Yeah.
Big part of it.
But I wonder, because almost from the beginning, you also kind of described yourself, as a weirdo, as a misfit, as an outsider.
Yeah.
And it's almost also became kind of a brand for you, that you were kind of outside of everything.
That's right.
It became an identity in itself, not having the identity of everybody else.
Well, you kind of make fun of yourself as a creepy weirdo, It became a thing. I made a magazine called Weirdo, says for the kind of outsider stance, and it's funny. When that Crumb film came out in the 90s, done by Terry Zwigoff, and the critics, there was a lot of stuff written about it. It was completely divided into two camps. The critics who found it very sympathetic and they could identify with the outsider dilemma and all that stuff and the predicament. And there's others that just said, God, this is so creepy and repulsive. Well, there's two completely different reactions. So, there are people who, I don't know, they're well-adjusted. They don't get it. They don't understand, And so, you kind of develop a sort of stance as an outsider.
Yeah, but did it also become, because as you talked about it a little bit about it before and also in interviews, that you were never really, that the kind of the hippie movement or the youth movement in the 60s kind of liberated you as well, but you never really felt a part of it, and actually you started making fun of it as well.
Yeah, that's right. Sure. It became very excessive in certain silly ways that I couldn't get with it. For one thing, I didn't like the music. I didn't like psychedelic rock music at all. I thought it was boring and endless noodling guitar solos that go on for 40 minutes. But the thing I had in common was taking LSD, and that just opened things up in this way. And then you'd see somebody else in the mid-'60s that had taken LSD. Right away, you had some kind of rapport with those people. They saw something about the illusion of reality that most people just didn't see at all. So that was a real core thing in the hippie era, was that people being opened up by LSD, for better or worse. In some ways, it made you kind of helpless and completely unfit to deal with the practical realities of modern life, So people wanted to go back to the land and all that because it seems simpler. But then once you get on the land, you say, geez, it's a lot of work growing food, hoeing the ground, and geez. So that didn't work out so good.
I think you took LSD, was it 64, 65 for the first time?
First time in June of 65.
June of 65.
I remember it well. Oh yeah, it was like, that moment in the New Testament when St. Paul is knocked off his horse by some light in the sky. It was like that, It was.
And you made a lot of
good stuff. It was from Sandoz Pharmacy. It was the real stuff.
But I guess you were also kind of, in that sense, it inspired you, and it opened up a lot, and it tore down walls for you.
Artistically inspired, deeply. Yeah.
And also kind of freed you from the inhibitions you may have had.
Well, it's kind of cultural that freedom from inhibitions happened over a period of years, being part of that hippie culture, and then the 60s and the sexual freedom movement, or whatever called sexual, free love and all that stuff, and the guy Gay Talese wrote a book about it, and then it ended up just being a bunch of suburban swingers having wife swapping parties, or that led, but at the time, yes, and you take LSD and this hippie thing. Nobody knew what the parameters were anymore. What are the limits of behavior? I knew this young hippie girl who thought it was okay to let babies suck guys' dicks and stuff. It was like that, and people didn't know what the parameters were, and it all had to be reinvented, refigured out from the ground up. So it was kind of confusing in a way. Hippies would be sitting around and nobody knew what they were supposed to do or how they're supposed to behave. So everybody's like being real cool, and yeah, cool, yeah, groovy, right? Wow, yeah. It is nobody. So. But then there was always this few golden ones, among the hippies who seemed to know what to do, seemed to be free and floating on air, and there's always a few of those around. Everybody else wanted to be like them.
I think on screen now we have a small excerpt from a Fritz the Cat strip.
Right,
where
1965.
65, and he's in an orgy in a bathtub.
I was 22 years old when I drew that.
But Fritz the Cat actually was part of your drawings from much earlier than that.
Yeah, started when I was in my teens,
Yeah. But how? And the interesting thing is that when you read Fritz the Cat today, you can also see how your drawing style
Evolved,
develops
yeah.
or evolves a lot.
Yeah.
This is when you killed him off in the
Some
early
people
70s?
like this the best. They think that's my best stuff.
Okay. What do you think yourself?
I don't know. I can't judge.
No. But you can still watch it and read it. Or
Yeah. It's kind of amusing. By this time, I was already such a veteran of drawing comics. By the time I was 22, I'd drawn so much comics. My brother Charles, my older brother, made me draw those comics. You got to draw those comics every month. Get your issues out. Fritz the Cat and Brombo the Panda. You have to get them out there every month. So, from the time I was like 8 years old, I'd already drawn thousands of comics by this time. So yeah, it's not bad for 22. It's okay.
I think people would say it's more than okay.
I'm not embarrassed by it.
No, not embarrassed. That's good. But what kind of character? What could you use? Because Fritz the Cat was both there before the acid trip and after.
Yeah.
And he was there before kind of free love, and he was there after. How was he a stand-in for you in a sense? Because this is before you've really started using yourself.
Yeah, it wasn't that personal.
Character.
I didn't start drawing really personal stuff till I met Aileen. And she inspired me because she was totally just all about her comics were just about her personal experience. And I thought, okay, why not? Yeah. But I don't know what Fritz the Cat was. It was kind of a reflection of a couple guys that I knew at that time were sort of cocky, hip, young guys, and had more successful with women than I was.
He's also very much a charlatan.
Yeah, he could have a jive line of talk that he could do. He could pull it off. I couldn't, but he could. So it's kind of an alter ego more than a reflection of my real self.
A lot of life pain. He's struggling with life and existence. Or is he?
That's part of his line, That's part of his come
spiel,
on, his struggle with his pain and personal angst. And I knew a lot of guys like that. It came out of kind of beatnik era, that you try and present yourself as like a Jack Kerouac type of character, I knew guys like that, and it worked. Worked with girls.
Let's go. Now we have some Mr. Natural. One of my personal favorites, and the strip we see here, it's in Danish, but it is the one where God invites him to heaven, and he doesn't really, he thinks, well, this doesn't look like much. And
kind of boring,
Yeah, exactly, and then God throws him out.
Right, kicks him, okay, fuck you, get out.
But again, was that a reaction to all kind of the spirituality wave that was in the air? And
I guess it was a combination of that and my religious upbringing. I was brought up in a Catholic thing, went to Catholic school. So, a deep programming of Christian religion and God and Jesus and all that. I had to deal with all that stuff when I was taking LSD and I became Jesus nailed to the cross. I was Jesus myself on the cross and bleeding out of the palms of my hands, the whole deal. I went on and on for like an hour or something. I suddenly realized, no, wait, I'm not Jesus. Throw this cross away, get rid of it. So, I had to deal with all that crap.
False prophets and things like that.
Just the whole religious programming, got it very heavily as a kid from Catholic school, and the sisters, who really fucked me up about women badly, the sisters. It distorted my whole thing.
But that is one of the interesting things about your work. It is deeply personal, but it's also deeply political. And how aware of that were you when you did these? Was it kind of just a burst of energy, or did you think about that, now I want to say something about society?
Well, it's kind of, I don't know, it's all of that stuff all mixed together in my head. I don't know. I couldn't explain it.
No.
Can't explain what. People say, explain what motivated you to do this. I can't do that. I don't know.
That's fair enough. Okay, let's look at big ass instead. that is one of your big fascinations, sexual.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Or it was.
Okay. Like I said, I don't think about women anymore. I don't draw women. I don't look at them. I'm finished with that. or at least let's just.
But
I'm a good boy now.
as far as I know, you've said somewhere, I think it was, there was a big interview with you in 91 or 92 in the Comics Journal where you talked to Gary Groth.
I could have used some editing. It went on and on and on.
Yeah, it did. And a lot about sex, I would say. It was almost all
really?
about sex, yeah.
Really? I don't even remember it. I don't remember.
But you talked about that you got too much love from the hippies.
From the audience.
Or from the audience, and then you decided to go even further with your comics.
That's right. Let's see if they can take this. They love me for Mr. Natural. Let's see if they can take the vulture demonesses. And that that lost the female audience completely. Almost 100%. Alienated all the women, all the girls. I remember when I did Snatch comics, and this beautiful young, we were living at this roommate, this young guy who was very successful with picking up girls from Haight Street and bringing them back to the place, and he's always bringing these teenage girls over all the time and having sex with them, and we're sitting around the table smoking pot, and I wanted to impress this young girl. I said, hey, here's this comic I did. You want to look at it? And she handed her Snatch comic. And she kind of looked at it, and she just like handed it back to me like this.
This is Snatch comics, yeah.
I said, here, take, no, I don't.
We have some Snatch comics here.
And I was actually surprised. I was so naive. Huh? She doesn't like my Snatch comics? Why? What's wrong? It took me a while to figure out.
Yeah. But when you did you deliberately set out to provoke, or was it just kind of, this is...
Yeah, you're young, you want to kind of provoke, you want to be a provocateur, and also you want to kind of like break out of it's like bourgeois blandness and all the censorious stuff about the media that we grew up with, as you talked about the comics that you read as a kid, that's all very, they have rules. When you're a straight cartoonist like that in those days, they had a whole list of rules of things you can't do. Never show anybody drunk, never show anybody like touching a woman, under this, that, a big, set of rules of things you couldn't do in that world. So we just had to break out of all the underground cartoonists, and draw any crazy thing that came into your head, like S. Clay Wilson, draw people getting their penises chopped off, and violence and sex, and all just pour it out onto the page, So a lot of people did that.
But it's interesting because a lot of your comics were not published in Danish, I think, until the late 70s and early 80s. And even though they were published in a series of albums called Underground, they were still available.
It's not really underground. No, it wasn't. But was there a big hippie cultural revolution in Denmark in the 60s?
There was, yes.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But I'm not sure. I don't think any of your comics, at least were published in Danish, or at least on established.
I was amazed when I was
publishers.
in Serbia about 5 years ago. When was that? 2012. We were in Serbia, and they had a comics festival, and I was surprised. The Serbians were really into comics. This was in Belgrade, and then this guy came up to me with these old, like dog-eared comics of mine that had been translated into Serbian in the 70s. I'd never seen them before. And he said, I published these in the 70s, and I'm sorry, I couldn't find you, so I couldn't pay you. You want to be paid? And I said, nah, forget it. But who knew? I published in the 70s, they're doing these kind of like samizdat, really underground versions of my comics, very crudely printed and all that, but it was kind of flattering,
But what I think is, I was meant to say that while it was underground, at least in the beginning in America, I don't think it's ever been underground in that sense here in Denmark with these comic books, because it was an established publisher put them out, and actually you could find them in the school library, you could find them in the public library.
School library?
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
wow.
It's. I know it's a depraved nation.
I should have moved to Denmark. Wow.
Yeah, you should.
Who knew? I had no idea. Wow.
But
wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
What a country.
And here we have her name is what? Sally Blubberbutt? Is that?
Sally Blubberbutt.
Yeah. It's. And she is. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that in a lot of these comics, you actually have the men behaving really badly. And,
Yes, badly.
And they get their comeuppance as well.
Sometimes they get punished, sometimes they get away with it.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just a mood thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Very bad. I was very bad when I was young. Bad boy.
You described yourself, the first drawing we showed, the family that lays together stays together. And
Yeah.
in that same comic, when it was published, it was in the back of the comic, and in that same comic there was one of your incestuous comic books where the father and mother teaches the...
Joe Blow? Yeah.
Joe Blow, exactly.
Yeah? Oh.
And I remember you've called yourself, maybe I was just, you've said about yourself, maybe I was just a punk.
I was being a punk.
But
right.
still... There's for me at least, and I don't know if I'm over theorizing or analyzing, but for me
Probably.
there's still, I guess that's why I'm here to do
Right.
that, and then you can just say I'm stupid. But there's a lot of other things going on in a lot of your drawings in that sense, because they also it's your demons and
Yes.
your fantasies on
Yes.
page, but it's also a lot of America's demons
That's
and
true.
fantasies.
That's very perceptive.
I read that somewhere,
Right.
so it's.
Yeah,
I think it was in the program for this festival or something like that.
Right.
But it is again. I know I've asked a similar question before, but is that something that you became aware of, that you wanted to do something that was also kind of saying something about the society you were living in, that the country you were living in, that there were things that you could see that were wrong, or at least problematic?
Geez, I don't know. I'm not sure. But, I remember when I did Joe Blow, that comic got busted in New York State. And the judge declared that the comic had no socially redeeming value and was not allowed to be sold in New York State from then on, that particular comic. Yeah. But they never busted me. They would bust a poor store clerk, who sold the comic to somebody. He got that. Some 19-year-old kid would be busted for that. So, and
How much did you work with your own kind of drawing, the way you drew? Were you kind of how did you work with your comic books? Did you just work, because it seems like you've been working at a pace that's insane. You drew so many things.
Yeah, I did. I kind of hid from the world on paper. I just lived my youth on paper, I was always drawing, and in social situations I felt very uncomfortable. I was afraid of people, so I just sit there drawing all the time. That's what I do. I always carried a sketchbook everywhere I went. Just carried it around with me.
But did you have time to think about how you developed your style, or was this just something that came natural, that it kind of developed?
I tried different things, I'd looked at all the, I was completely deeply influenced by artists like Karl Barks, who drew Donald Duck, and Walt Kelly, that did Pogo, and this one and that one, and Harvey Kurtzman was a big influence and all that stuff. So I was so steeped in American comics, trying to figure out some style, and you go through, when you're young, you try and come up with some gimmick, and that doesn't work, so, you just keep going and trying different things. And then when I took LSD, that completely turned everything upside down, just shook everything and brought a whole other attitude about what I was doing, Much more broader, vastly broader perspective on what I was doing when I took LSD.
But the funny thing about, even though this one also quite sexual in nature, and big butts and things like that, but it's also very cute. There's something very cute about and kind of round.
To you, maybe. Let's ask one of these women out here what they think about it. So what do you think about it? No, never mind. Don't
exactly.
tell me. I don't.
Don't tell me. No, but it's but this kind of style that again the first one, the family that lays together, the edge is taken off in a sense because of the way you draw these people.
Yeah,
Was that
I
something
guess
you were
so.
conscious about? Or?
No, I wasn't.
No.
But I started getting letters from guys, mostly like creepy, social outcasts like myself, thanking me for liberating them from feeling like they were just like totally the only creepy weirdo in the world, No, there's lots of us creepy weirdos.
I don't think I wrote you, but yeah. But still, that's true.
So, you find a sympathetic audience,
Yeah.
But there's a kind of like well-adjusted type people that don't get it. They just why would you draw something so creepy, and so negative, and why are you so negative about everything? They just they don't get it. It's not, they don't have that experience somehow in life. I don't know. I remember once sitting down to a young man on a bus once. I was going somewhere. He was a very good-looking young man. We got to talking, and I told him how, when I was his age, I was depressed all the time. And he said, "Yeah, I think I was depressed once." He said.
This one is from a comic book called Artistic Comics, and
Right.
it's named The Artist and Muse. I think it's
Right.
just The Artist and His Muse. It says. I think it's
Oh, boy.
and this is from the period where you really start kind of using yourself, as you said. You've met Aileen,
That's right.
your wife now,
Yeah.
and you started using yourself.
Yeah.
A lot more, but
More and
did
more,
that
yeah.
also feel more honest to you in a sense?
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, there was no personal comics like that. When I was a kid, nobody did comics about themselves. It was unknown when I was a child, when I was a teenager, and like the first person to really do that, really personal. Well, there was Jules Pfeiffer, who was kind of personal, but the one who really did it was Justin Green. And then Aileen started doing it. She was really the first two cartoonists to be completely, totally, deeply, unashamedly personal. And that, again, is like an eye-opening. So, so just show yourself in this situation. Don't disguise it with another animal character or something. Just draw yourself as this ridiculous, absurd creature with these fantasies. And you know what?
Yeah.
All these fantasies, they all came true. Life imitated art.
It was worth it.
Life imitates art. Who knew? I had no idea. But it turned out to be true. Everything I drew, and I ended up actually experiencing that and more. I was
So
completely-
even this one,
Oh, yeah, sure.
beheading a nun.
No. Not the violent, not something like that, no.
Not like that, no. But is the
I was a
Catholic?
very angry young man, you can see. Very
But
angry.
you grew up Catholic,
Yes, I did, yeah.
and you lost your faith when you were a teenager.
Yeah, that's right.
But is the Catholic guilt or the shame, is that something you carry with you to this day?
Deeply embedded in my mind. It started when I was 6 years old, going to Catholic school. It starts, you're very young, they start telling you this stuff. Tell you if you're not a good boy and don't obey all the rules of the church, that you will go to hell when you die.
Yeah.
You'll go straight to hell and for eternity, suffering for eternity. You know what it's like to be in hell? Just eternal fire, you're burning forever. They tell you that when you're 6 years old. That sticks, I remember in the 70s when I saw The Exorcist, that movie, it actually scared the hell out of me. I realized I'm not over that shit yet, The devil was so scary. I was still affected by that nonsense. I still deal with that. And, people who say, oh, forget all that stuff. It's not so easy when you get that programming from a young age, from childhood. It affects the way your mind develops. It's like brain damage to get that kind of programming as a child, deeply religious programming. And I think most of these guys who are like repressed, violent guys who want to kill people and stuff, I think they get that kind of programming from childhood that's very severe and repressive. A lot of them grew up in like fundamentalist Christian things and stuff.
But it's also seemed to have been your artistic drive as your libido, the Catholic guilt and the shame, and all these things that you managed to use it.
Yeah, sure. It's all fodder for the mill,
Yeah, exactly.
All goes into the cartoons. Thank God I had a way of expressing that. Thank you, God, for giving me that. The sisters would tell me that I was abusing my God-given talents.
Yeah. And here they want, in this strip here, both the police and the nun wants to punish you.
Yeah, all these
what you've
big
done.
authority figures.
Yeah.
Police, all authority figures. I was in my 20s, raging against authority.
One of the things I really enjoy about a lot of your comic books, and also the way you talk about them today, is that you also very self-deprecating in a sense, and you in a lot of them, you have this kind of meta layer where you say, you say something really horrible, and then at the end, relax, girls, it's just a comic book.
Yeah, it's just lines on paper. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And in interviews, you say you call yourself a punk. In this Guardian interview I referred to earlier, you said that if you didn't have the comic book, you would probably be in a mental institution or in jail.
That's right.
But you have this very kind of
Vacaville prison for the criminally insane.
but this kind of self-deprecating way, was that also sometimes to take the edge off, or was it a self-defense in a sense?
Well, I could not very well present myself heroically, nothing much heroic about my personality. I was afraid of people as a weakling, and a girl beat me up in 3rd grade, and I told her I was going to go home and tell my mommy because she broke my glasses. And she said, "Oh yeah, go home and tell your mommy I broke your glasses," and her and her friends all laughed at me. So it's not much to, And I don't like heroic comics. I don't like heroic stories about superheroes, and I don't get that. I don't understand what the attraction is of those kind of heroes, that kick ass and everything is like settled by some kind of like being a kicking ass. I don't get that. I don't understand that. So I much prefer anti-heroes and self-deprecating comedians, Buster Keaton or Woody Allen. Just kind of admit you're like a schlemiel. Like
this next image here is from Snoid.
It's like Jewish humor is all full of that the schlemiel.
Schlemiel, yeah, it's a good word.
Yeah, because Jewish people, they don't have that violent kick-ass hero. Well, now they do with Israel, sort of, but for centuries they didn't have kick-ass heroes.
The anti-hero, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of developed that, which I have very much affinity for, that kind of anti-hero character.
In this next one, it's from Snoid Comics, and you have Mr. Snoid here breaking out of the page and scaring and taking over from the artist.
Yeah.
And in that, of course, you can read all sorts of things into that. But I was wondering, is that the way you draw? Is it kind of that the characters take over and they go where they want to go?
They do.
Just have to follow.
They have a life of their own. They do, the characters. They have a life of their own. I mean, that Devil Girl character that I drew, you remember that one? Devil Girl. I decided to make a life-size statue of her. I made her kind of a little bit bigger than life, really big. And I worked on that statue for months and months, and I got finer and finer. And when it started, the details start coming out, the face and everything, she really started talking to me and telling me what she wanted. So I'd put little hearts on my socks. She would tell me what to do. And it got just weird. It got really sick. It did. It got really weird. It got so weird. I can't even tell you. How strange it got. It was like, and I realized, that's when like the Egyptians built those statues of their gods. They actually imbued those statues with some kind of energy that, could be very scary.
Did you have to stop your characters, or did you just let them go all the way?
Like to stop. I don't know. I guess I let that Snoid go all the way.
Well, he's not that nice a guy.
No, he's an awful guy. That's from LSD. Snoid. I saw them on LSD. Snoids. I saw the vulture demonesses on LSD.
Okay.
All kinds of. I saw Angel Food Mixed Spade on LSD. Mr. Natural. They all came out of LSD, or someone said, "Oh yeah, those are astral beings." Some spiritual guy said, "Yeah, those are all astral beings." Oh, okay. Who knew? I didn't know. And they're archetypal energy things. I don't know.
So at one point you met Aileen.
Yes.
And at another
November
point
71.
November 71.
Yes.
And then at one other point you started doing Dirty Laundry comics.
Yeah.
As Aileen told me earlier, and she's going to talk probably about the comics just after this, and again perhaps on Sunday. But this is something completely different, again, because it's the two of you going into kind of a dialogue through comics.
Oh, yeah. It's very easy to do those comics with Aileen. They kind of drew themselves with her. you know. All I do was like feed her lines, and she would come back with, you know, her own kind of Jewish comedy thing. So it was just easy to say, Aileen, how's your mother? And she'd just go on and on for pages about her mother. You know? It was always easy to do that with her. That was a breeze, drawing comics with her.
But it's also very much, as it says, dirty laundry. It's all very much about your life together, and it's also about the very mundane things, doing the laundry and doing the dishes and
Right.
mowing the lawn and taking care of
Right.
the children and things like that.
Yeah.
It's again, was it nice to do something different than all the other comics in a sense?
Well, like I said, it was a lot easier than sitting there facing the blank page by yourself. You know? And it's just, Aileen just poured out of her. Like a fountain of like stand-up Jewish humor. It just poured out of her. And she, like, we would do it sometime. After this, we got more careful later and started penciling out dialogue. You know, we'd write dialogue on paper. And she'd just fill up pages and pages with this dialogue. And then we'd have to like trim it down to like 1/10 of what actually was coming out of her. So it just came out of her like it's just a part of who she is. This thing, what she grew up with. Her grandfather was a great storyteller. Her father was a great storyteller. Her mother, they all, you know, had this kind of Jewish storytelling thing.
And you also said that Aileen saved your sorry ass.
Yeah, she did. Still is.
She is.
Still saving my sorry ass.
How so?
Huh?
How so?
I don't cope very well with the world, you know. I don't know how to deal with people and people that want things and people that constantly the phone ringing and stuff and want to do deals and want me to draw their stories and stuff. I don't know what to say. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I want everybody to love me. And she's tougher than I am, you know. She can deal with the world better than I do. And like when I travel with her, I don't feel anxiety. When I'm by myself, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my ticket, lose my passport. I left my suitcase back there. Oh, Jesus Christ. But with her, she's always like on top of things, and you know, she can cope. She copes better than I do with the world. So you know, if I wasn't with her, I might be dead by now. I don't know. And before I met her, I had some really crazy girlfriends and a really crazy first wife, truly crazy. And, you know, the constant like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know how to deal with them. They're crying and they're screaming. They're threatening to commit suicide. She's very level. You know, Aileen's cool. She's level. She's level. On feet on the ground, solidly rooted to the ground.
You've done a lot of other things than comic books. Well, you also did. You did a comic on Jelly Roll Morton, who's one of your, I think, musical idols.
Yeah, I like Jelly Roll Morton. Yeah.
But you also this one and the next one here are from
Bukowski. Love Bukowski.
Yeah.
Love him. Still like to read Bukowski. He's great. Great.
And how do you kind of how is that different for you to do something where you have the words of another artist and then you have to illustrate it?
Well, if I'm sympathetic to the guy's writing, it's good. It gets me even deeper into the guy's psyche. Like that thing I did about Kafka. Before I did that, I didn't know much about Kafka. I only read a couple of things. When I did that, I got so deep. He became like my brother. Connection was so profound to his work when I illustrated it. You know, I liked it. I liked it a lot, Kafka.
And then there's this magazine you've put out 3 issues of, I think, Art and Beauty.
Yeah.
It's also collected in a book where you do a lot of your drawings or your sketches.
These are all taken from photos. There's a few from life, not many, mostly from photos. Yeah. This one came out of a magazine or a newspaper or something.
Yeah.
This girl runner, that's Aileen there. That's a photo I took of Aileen.
And I was just wondering, because your style kind of changed during the years, and when you do these drawings, it's much more detailed, it's much more graphic in a sense than some of the other things you've done.
Earlier stuff was looser, so I just got tighter and tighter with the rendering and the technique, which happens to some artists as they age. They get tighter in their own little world, their own technique, you know. And sometimes you lose the kind of the creative spontaneity as you get older, you know. It's like when you're 25, you can take off at a sprint and run, 100 yards or whatever. But when you're 50 or 60, you can't do that anymore. You got to be more careful. It's the same thing. You kind of get more into, less spontaneous and more into your technique. Just kind of thing that happens to a lot of artists.
And these are the kind of drawings you do mostly today?
Mostly, yeah, mostly. Tight stuff like that, yeah. A lot of cross-hatching, endless cross-hatching.
It takes a long time to do a drawing.
Yes, long time, yeah.
We started out with incest, and I think we should end with the Bible. Not, 10 years ago you published this?
Yeah, that's right.
It's
been 10 years already, geez.
Genesis, and you worked on that for, what, four years?
4 years, yeah. It was a lot of work.
So it's very interesting because you're very close to the text, but then you draw whatever you want to draw.
I try to stick as close to what the text describes, but often the text is very terse in there, in Genesis, and doesn't really tell you much. It's the text often. You don't know how to actually illustrate things. So it takes some creative liberties, but I tried not to take too much. I wanted it to be as close as I possibly could to what I thought they were talking about in there. No one will ever know how much whiteout I used in that. A lot of corrections.
But what was the attraction as a lapsed Catholic doing Genesis?
Well, part of it was the money. First, I had this idea to do a send-up, a satire of Adam and Eve, just as a comic story, like 10-page thing, Adam and Eve, the first couple chapters of Genesis, and then it's Dennis Kitchen, who was a publisher agent. I told him about it. He said, well, why don't you just do all of Genesis? And I said, boy, that's a lot of work, all of Genesis, all 50 chapters, that's a lot of work. He said, well, what if I can find a publisher who will pay you, a big advance to do it? I said, okay, well, shop the idea around and see what you can find. So he came back to me, he said, oh, this publisher is willing to pay you $250,000 advance for Genesis. I said, okay, let's go, I'll do it.
Yeah, I would have done it too, yeah.
But then 4 years later, well, maybe it wasn't such a great deal. But
okay,
it sold well. It's the best-selling thing I ever did, by far.
Yeah. Okay.
By far and away the best-selling thing. And guess why? It's the Bible.
It's the Bible, which is the best-selling book.
That's right, and it's all there. Nothing left out.
How are the reactions from church
people?
Religious people, yeah.
Not so bad. I have these Christian Cartoonist Association who got on my case about it, and they said, you have left out all of the predictions in Genesis of the coming of Jesus. I said, gee, I guess I missed that. I didn't see that in there. These guys insisted there's all these places where the coming of Jesus is predicted in Genesis. I didn't see that at all. What they're talking about. But other than that, not too bad.
One final thing I want to ask you. Fantagraphics, the American publisher, has published a lot of volumes with all the complete Robert Crumb comics, going way back.
Just from the beginning, yeah.
From the beginning. And there's an introduction to the first volume.
Yeah.
Where the guy who writes it...
Marty Pauls? Is it Marty Pauls who wrote that?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, it's my old friend of mine.
He quotes something that you wrote, perhaps in a journal in '61.
Letter to him. I wrote probably in a letter to him.
Okay, and it says, sometimes and this is something you wrote, sometimes I think I am America's answer to Leonardo da Vinci or Shakespeare. And then, this, and then you say, and then the uncertainty and self-doubt sets in, and then you think you're just going to
be a bum
or something else, yeah. So how do you, when you look back at it today, I don't want to ask you if you think you became Leonardo da Vinci or Shakespeare, but...
It's a matter of having what my brother Charles called being a wounded narcissist. You know, you have a narcissistic ego. On the one hand, you think you're, you know, this great, superior, exceptional person. On the other hand, you just think you're just an utter piece of shit that's like, you know, inept, defective. There's something deeply, deeply wrong with you, and you're barely going to survive in the world. And so just go back and forth. And then the other side thinks you're this great artist or whatever. It's a fucked up ego thing.
But today, so many years later, with a lot of people clearly loving you here,
Yeah.
having made me the person I am today.
Oh, geez.
I'm sorry about that. But is that doubt
I don't want
still
that
there?
responsibility. What?
Yeah, I'm afraid you're gonna have to
please.
take it.
Please, no.
But is the doubt still there?
Don't blame
today?
it on me.
I am. Every time my mother says, I said it's Crumb. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's
Blame it on Crumb.
yeah.
Write him a complain to
Yeah.
him.
But is the doubt still there?
The doubt about what? That I'm Leonardo da Vinci? Come on.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, Robert Crumb. You are Robert Crumb.
Yeah, but you know, put my stuff down next to Bruegel. I don't know.
I still prefer Crumb.
Bruegel, oh, come on. Bruegel's the greatest, the best. Nobody's ever going to top him, ever.
Okay. Famous last words, yeah. Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay.
Crumb. Thank you very much for coming.